Well, hello there, my friend. Welcome to another episode of Stand Up. This is the Wednesday episode that's dropping here on the 23rd of August, and a big happy 50th birthday to my big brother Brian, who probably isn't listening, but still want to give him wish him a happy birthday. Big one for you, bro. Thank you for making me, being my mentor, my role model, and my biggest influencer to this day. Can't do much of anything without you. Happy birthday, Brian Dominic. All right. You know what? Now I'm going to make him press play on today's podcast. I think you will all love my guest today. I've got Colby Hall joining me for the first time. He is the founding editor of Mediaite, and I think our conversation is great. He's a great talker, a great guest, a great writer. I love all of his articles, and he posts probably several a day at Mediaite, one of my favorite websites to follow what's happening in the news and media. Colby and I have a great conversation, and that starts at 13 minutes just after a robust, comprehensive recap of yesterday's news. Here's what happened in the last 24, as I used to call it. I should bring that back. And a reminder that I will be hosting a hangout tonight with hopefully some special guests stopping by to watch the primary debates. I'll open it up around 7:30, I think, or half an hour before the debates start. Let me check what time that they start, and I'll host a hangout, and we will have some fun watching this craziness that is going to happen on Fox News in Milwaukee, Wisconsin tomorrow at 9 to 11 East. So we'll get it started at 8:30. I'll open up the Zoom and you'll get a link to it if you're a paid subscriber. If you're not, sign up now and join us. Also, I'll be hosting the regular hangout on Thursday night, and then I'll be in Washington, D.C. if you want to hang out in person on Friday night. A few of us are going to get together some venue. I'll let you know if you email and want to join us. Standupwithpete@gmail.com if you want to hang out in D.C. this weekend. And also, I'll be performing in Iowa, September 7th, Thursday, September 7th, Iowa City. Come on out to that. You want tickets? There's a link in the show notes, or just email me, standupwithpete@gmail.com. All right, a couple clips to play for you, some news, and then we'll get to my conversation with Colby. Day 945 of the Biden presidency. The Trump lawyer who led efforts to overturn the 2020 election surrendered at Fulton County Jail. It's John Eastman, and he is in big trouble for sure. The former chairman of the Georgia Republican Party and one of the 19 co-defendants in the election interference case claimed that he, quote, acted at the direction of Trump. They're turning on him. Mark Meadows asked a federal court in Georgia to block state authorities from arresting him and to immediately move his criminal election interference case to federal court. And the argument he basically made is that he's better and more important than other criminals, and they're not going to buy it, I don't think. A federal judge temporarily blocked part of Georgia's ban on gender-affirming care for transgender youth. The federal appeals court ruled that Alabama can enforce a ban on hormone treatments and puberty blockers for transgender youth. And I'm still wondering why that is some issue that is dominating so much of what is happening at state-level legislative priorities. Well, I know why it's happening, but we all do. It's just terrible that it is. 51% of likely Iowa Republican caucus goers now believe that Trump's claims that he won the 2020 presidential election despite no evidence of widespread election fraud. 51% of likely Republicans believe that he still won. How about that? Big controversy around Joe Biden's visit to Maui. If you are a right-wing lunatic, this is how it played out yesterday on Fox News' The Five. Jessica Tarlov, the one liberal on the panel, getting a lot of credit. This went viral, and it's just more proof that anytime you have someone there to challenge these lies and ridiculous exaggerations and hyperbolic claims being made on a show like that, it makes a huge difference, because listen to this.
But there have been so many craven lies told about the timeline of the response on this. Jesse just said his first comments were no comment, which is categorically untrue. So that was on August 13th. The wildfires started on August 8th. On August 10th, that's when a major disaster declaration occurred. He got the call, the request from Hawaii to do that. It took him just 63 minutes to sign that.
He signed a piece of paper. I'm talking about significant public comments.
Just wait for it. And then later that day, he was in Utah talking about something else, and he opened up by commenting on what was going on in Hawaii and how devastating it was. Listen to what the governor of Hawaii, Josh Green, said. Within 6 hours, the administration met our needs with federal movement. I don't think that's ever happened before. the Maui County mayor. I wanted to say how responsive the president has been. He called me. I asked for the help that we needed. And within 2 hours, one of his cabinet members called me to answer my question. We've been getting all the help that we need.
That's the Maui mayor. Just pointing that out.
Right. And you don't think at a time when there are hundreds of people dead and there's another 1,000 people that are missing, that the Maui mayor wouldn't have said, Joe Biden is lying to you when he says that they care.
Oh, you got to be nice. You got to be nice. You have to be nice because you're hoping for something.
You're hoping for all the things that he got. The FEMA aid came in. I saw Republicans criticizing him. Why do you only give them $700? That's the FEMA limit. This thing about the ground, the hot ground, he was talking to a dog whose paws are on the ground. It's not like he's saying to people.
What a guy talking about talking to a dog. Are you kidding me? This is a guy who.
There's Janine Pirro. She woke up right there at the end because her wine box apparently was empty. I know that's a hacky joke to make about her, that she drinks wine and is always drunk and drinks it out of a box. But it does make me laugh every time because it seems to be like a spot-on stereotype. It's got to be some truth to it, right? Is that a sexist anti-Italian thing? If it is, I'm okay with it as it pertains to her. Anyway, great job, Jessica Tarlov, in the face of a constant full frontal assault from the rest of the five. By the way, I've got a great conversation with Juliet Jeske joining me, and I'll drop that later on today, I think, as a Can You Talk Real Quick episode. She, of course, is a purveyor of Decoding Fox News, so look for that. She watches that stupid show every single day, so we don't have to. All right, what else do I have for you? Oh, let's head over to CNN, where there was some news on the Rudy Giuliani front, and I thought I'd grab this 1 minute piece of reporting from CNN yesterday.
You also have some exclusive reporting, Paula, on Rudy Giuliani's legal struggles in Georgia. What are you learning there?
And that's right. Well, he has legal struggles across the country right now, Wolf, and he is facing 7-figure legal debt, which has made it difficult for him to retain counsel and to get an attorney. And right now we have learned that former New York Police Commissioner Bernie Kerik, who is also an unindicted co-conspirator in this case, is working closely with his longtime friend and ally Rudy Giuliani to help him through this process. Now, Bernie Kerik, in his role as the New York Police Commissioner, has a lot of experience with this process. He also held a leadership role in the correction system in New York. So he knows what this process is like, and he's trying to help Giuliani find a Georgia lawyer, which is what he needs for someone to sign his bond agreement. But it's unclear when Giuliani will come to Georgia to surrender. At this point, it does not appear that he has an attorney, but he does appear to have the support of one of his unindicted co-conspirators.
I don't think the reporter, who is generally good there, Paula, what's her last name? I'm forgetting it. Remembered that she should have added that he also, Bernie Kerik, he also served time. This is the former police commissioner, head of corrections before that, a Rudy Giuliani friend, who also pled guilty to federal tax fraud and other charges and served 3 years in prison before his release in 2013. Of course, Donald Trump pardoned Bernie Kerik during a 2020 clemency blitz that also included Rod Blagojevich. So that would have been maybe worth mentioning. I think she just probably forgot it or maybe didn't know it, but how do you not know that one? All right, well, the only other thing I really wanted to mention is that more news has come out about the shooter who pulled down a pride flag at a display outside the Mag.Pie store in Cedar Glen, California, yelled many homophobic slurs before shooting and murdering Laura Ann Carlton. I won't say the shooter's name, but guess what? He had a Twitter account, and he also had an account on Gab that was taken down on Monday, but a lot of different media outlets were able to save the posts and retrieve them before they were removed. And of course, it paints the picture of a really disturbed dude who was radicalized into violent action by the MAGA movement. Of course, that's what it says. Maybe you don't think so, but the guy was a huge Trump supporter, tweeting things like, "Pray for Trump" and "God bless him." He replied to all kinds of different Trump tweets. There's too many to mention. But he also warned votes for Trump could be rigged when using voting machines and mail-in ballots. He reacted to Ashley Babbitt being killed during the January 6th riot by warning police are part of a perpetual war on the people. He liked to tweet calling Obama and Biden the worst human beings walking the planet. And another tweet reported on Republican Representative Andy Ogle's effort to impeach Joe Biden. He liked those tweets. He celebrated conservative justices SCOTUS justices overturning Roe v. Wade. He wrote, next thing to abolish and overturn same-sex marriage and other LGBTQ policies. The shooter liked tweets from former Trump lawyer and indicted co-conspirator Jenna Lewis, one from One American News reported on efforts to remove Gavin Newsom, and from other right-wing influencers. He took issue with NFL players protesting during the national anthem and so much more that you can just get used to expecting. He also once tweeted, narcissist people kill, not guns on their own. Of course, a common thing that you hear from those who are standing in the way of blocking gun violence legislation. So again, I won't say his name, but clearly, as I insinuated on yesterday's podcast, we now have the data from his social media post that he was radicalized. He was radicalized by the MAGA movement. You cannot argue against that. And these rainbow flags and other symbolism and solidarity with the LGBT movement and folks have been under attack for a long time. GLAAD and the Anti-Defamation League say that there have been more than 350 anti-LGBTQ plus hate and extremism incidents in the U.S. between June 2022 and April 2023. 350 attacks in under a year in the U.S. And of course, many of them have involved pride flags. And I like Nicholas Grossman, who was just on the show, his tweet. He says, media alone doesn't get someone to commit political violence. And yet, like the man who attacked Paul Pelosi while insisting fake conspiracy theories are real, the man who killed someone for displaying a pride flag didn't come to hate and fear that symbol this much on his own. And then he shares a whole bunch of tweets that the shooter himself shared from people like Matt Walsh, Jordan Peterson, Benny Johnson, who's a right-wing lunatic who's hugely famous on YouTube, and more. So I just thought I'd mention that. I paid a lot of attention to that story and have been mentioning it every day here on the podcast. So wanted to back it up with all of that reporting. Quickly, a couple of other headlines worth mentioning today. The massive central U.S. heat wave is expanding and could set hundreds of records. That's a headline at the Washington Post. Reuters. Maui wildfire victims fear land grab may threaten Hawaiian culture. CNN. Teamster members ratified deal at UPS putting strike threat to rest. Shout out to Stephen Cowings out there in California, shop steward for UPS. Democracy Now! As the headline, House Democrats demand probe of prisoner deaths amid unrelenting summer heat. And in a response to that demand, Marjorie Taylor Greene said we should allow the prisoners to cook. She didn't say that, but you wouldn't be surprised if she said that. Yeah, that's the thing. Another headline from Democracy Now! While I'm there, Atlanta activists gather 100,000 plus signatures for referendum to stop Cop City. That is a story I should be talking about, certainly worth following. But the best story yesterday, or at least the happiest story yesterday, was that children that were stuck in a cable car 900 feet above a ravine were rescued by Pakistan's armed forces. 7 students and a teacher rescued from this cable car in a daring, heroic rescue. And that is today's good news. How about it? All right, now it's time to get to my conversation with Mediaite's founding editor, Colby Hall, who has had a lot of different jobs in journalism and entertainment over the years. And I love his writing over at Mediaite, where he covers political media primarily, and he cranks out really interesting articles and covers these stories pretty quickly almost every day over at Mediaite. I've got links to all of his work in the show notes. This is his first time on the show, so ping him on Twitter and all the social media outlets and thank him for joining me, because I'd really like him to come back. And he's a great get for the show. I think we get good chemistry. We got along real well. And he reminded me of something that happened early in my career that helped jumpstart his at Mediaite, I guess. And I love this whole story. So let's start with that, and then we jump into our conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, for the first time ever, Colby Hall on Stand Up.
Good to be here. It's good. We can start recording, but you, I think I told you this, have a legendary role in the history of Mediaite, because it was your Rick Sanchez interview was flagged to us as a tip, and that went viral because we were the first to cover it. And sadly, it cost Rick Sanchez his job.
Yeah, well, you're welcome.
His anti-Semitic comments cost him his job, I should say.
That's right. Yeah, no, some people did interpret it as people interpret things and say, Pete Dominick, gets Rick Sanchez fired. I was just like,
you said what?
Actually, my defense at the time was, honestly, if anything, I tried to put the pin back in that grenade. I was like, hey, man, I don't know if you know what you just said, but what I heard was
the instant message alert in my earpiece from my producer texting me saying he's cooked.
Yes, he's done.
Anyway, that's awesome. Well, it's mutual respect, man. I love your stuff at Mediaite. I literally click your name in Mediaite and just see what you've come up with. I don't love everybody's stuff anywhere, so I always love. It's one of my favorite sites. You're one of the founding editors, so welcome to Stand Up for the first time. I can't believe it's the first time.
Well, thanks for having me, and I've long been a fan of your work. I think we know a lot of the same people because I used to produce Best Week Ever, so I think you came up with a bunch of comedians that I know very well, the Christian Finnegans, the Craig Baldos, that crew. So your reputation precedes yourself, so I'm delighted to be here. So thanks for having me.
Well, yeah, I'm excited to be promoting your work. I really think you're doing great stuff. You're prolific. The way you can kind of crank out a story and have it be accurate and links in it and everything. I'm really impressed with it. It's super, super helpful. And so I wanted to talk to you certainly about, I've reached out to you. We've been trying to get together for a long time. But when I saw this piece, it just screamed at me. I was like, that's the thing. It's titled "The Media, the Prosecutor, and Ex-President All Want the Same Thing from His Booking, His Arrests." And deep down, so do you, Colby Hall writes at Mediaite. Yeah, we do want it. I'm excited for it. Talk to me. Break me, psychoanalyze me and yourself, because you want it too.
The title is an homage to Peter Greenaway's "The Cook, the Thief, His Wife, and Her Lover," which you have to throw that shot in there.
Oh.
No, I just think that this is going to be a big media spectacle, and there's going to be this preemptive, coverage of the media are making a big deal about this. Of course they are. This is a huge deal, and unlike the other sort of indictment procedurals that have come before, this is very different. Fani Willis is making an example out of the president and is not giving him the sort of professional courtesy that Jack Smith has. So she's going to sort of spike the football, but so too is Trump. Trump's going to show up, and this is his cross to bear. He's the martyr. He's painting himself as the martyr, the victim. I half expect him to sort of lug a giant wooden cross in to as an effect, the kind of guys you used to see in the 80s college campuses. But and of course the media need to sell soap. They need Aberno. So they're going to be, it's not just going to be an OJ style helicopters overhead. They're going to be cameras in the booking, in the courtroom. And, who doesn't rubberneck when they drive past a traffic accident? This is a hot mess. And so, yeah, let's not pretend that this is somehow bad on us. This is a big, big, unprecedented deal. And of course, we're all going to watch, and it looks like it's going to happen on Thursday.
Looks like it's going to happen on Thursday. I guess you could turn yourself in. Any of these 19 could turn themselves in before Friday, I think I heard. He's decided now he strategically, and you can say a little bit about this, he was apparently, originally he was going to turn himself in during the Republican debate. Is that right? Is that reporting accurate?
I do think it's accurate, which would have been such an FU to Fox, because CNN and MSNBC would have had nothing to counter program, and that would have been such a gift. Instead, he's going to turn himself in Thursday morning, which I think even Bret Baier said to Hugh Hewitt this morning, that kind of made fun of this is counter programming. The idea that him turning himself in will blow up the post primary debate discussion, which, I guess is kind of media savvy, but it's also the most embarrassing reason. I got to go turn myself in for, trying to end democracy and cause a soft coup. But at least they're not talking about my rivals. What else does Trump have to play? He's playing the best hand that he can. I do think it's interesting that Fani Willis is making him show up at the Rice County Jail, which apparently is, they're not giving Trump any favors. They're not giving him the federal courthouse. They're making him show up and be treated like any random schmuck. And, good for her. Why not?
Well, you also mentioned that that's not exactly how Jack Smith has been handling it. I think you wrote in your article, but didn't mention Alvin Bragg gave him some kind of courtesies as well in the Manhattan DA. But Fani Willis is obviously doing this differently, and you, being a watcher of media, can describe to us before it happens, Colby, before it happens, because I'll release this ASAP, what will it look like on cable television, much less network television, the day that he turns himself into the Rice County Jail, Rice Street Jail?
Well, you're going to see every cable outlet have their panels of experts. There's going to be sweeping graphics packages. That's going to be, I don't know if they're going to repurpose the sweeping graphics package they used from the last Trump indictment, but this will be, sort of a whole day of special programming. And there'll probably be a lot of dead air in which we'll hear the same pundits just theorize the same thing, ultimately not say anything. They're allowing cameras, unlike federal courts, they'll allow cameras in the actual courtroom. I don't know yet if they will allow cameras for the mugshots, but the mugshot, I got to tell you, when the mugshot comes out, if you were a savvy entrepreneur, you could set up through Etsy or whatever these print t-shirt money things. If you could set up like automatic Trump mugshot t-shirts and sell them like through Etsy, you would make a quick $100,000 like that, because that will be hot merch. And it won't be Trump tried to sort of, own the mugshot with his Alvin Bragg one and sort of faked it. But I think it's going to be a shit show. It's going to be a total shit show. And, the conservative sort of allies, they're going to say, this is unprecedented. We've never had a president, sort of arrested and treated this way. Guess what? Like, we've never had a former president flout the decorum like this ever before. His actions have consequences, and you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. And here we are to watch it unfold in all its splendor.
Colby, you are a great analyst of all types of media. And now that I'm independent media and not corporate media, not CNN or SiriusXM as I was for so many years, I have less credibility because I'm in a shed. Do you think if I do more sound effects and like slick graphics, it will establish more credibility and help me?
I mean, I got to say, as an example, no, I think you got to keep your indie roots. I think the authenticity is always going to win over artifice. However, the one exception to that rule is you look at Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson really benefited from all the sort of, sweepers and swooshes and graphic mortise transitions. And then he went to do Tucker on Twitter, which is just a straight up, sort of slightly edited him sitting in a Maine log cabin interviewing whomever he wants to, Andrew Tate, among other people. And it's flat, it's boring, there's no movement. And so I do think that those, like all those bells and whistles, even though I'd like to say we're smarter than this, they hit your lizard brain and they're like, oh, a new shiny thing. Yeah. Oh, a new noise. Oh, this is important. But really, it's just, he's not saying anything different. There's more moving. There's more shiny objects.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because you've got Alex Jones, whose probably production budget is $1 million versus someone with hardly any production budget that is doing, I'm saying they're all equally influential, for better or for evil. The best, your favorite progressive independent creator might not have much of a budget, but they're very, very influential, regardless of a lot of the bells and whistles that you see people spending money on. I think it's fair to say that. Well,
look at Cenk Uygur, the Young Turks. Those guys have been blowing up forever. It's difficult to overestimate how influential they are, underestimate. And it's pretty straight up. They got a little bit more bells and whistles, but for the most part, it's just Cenk and Cenk. And as a result, he has an audience who are very loyal because he's not trying to be anything but himself, and it resonates.
Let me ask you one more just general question about media that is certainly interesting to me and you, and hopefully to folks listening, and then get back to a couple more of your most recent pieces over at Mediaite. But do you ever notice, and I bet you do, that once you lose your job in cable news on air, much less we should probably give more credit and talk to producers and off-air journalists and folks who work at the big media companies, but the on-air people are very prominent. Once you lose that corporate gig, it is really hard, and very rarely do you find one. We can both cite all different examples, from Brooke Baldwin to Andrew Cuomo. Brooke just got let go. I actually don't know the story, but I know she's not working on cable news because there aren't really any other jobs. Don Lemon, and you mentioned Tucker Carlson, which made me think of this. And the point I'm making is that people want to protect those jobs, and I think that the way that they protect those jobs is by making a lot of compromises when it comes to integrity and journalism. I'm not sure you agree with it, but I do see a lot of that, having worked in corporate media forever and in independent media and trying to maintain my integrity. I see a lot of compromises so that you don't lose the job, because guess what? There ain't another good one.
I mean, particularly people of a certain age and demographic, like, the sort of 57-year-old pudgy white dudes like myself have a hard time finding gigs there. And, for good reason. Like, I'm not going to complain about that. The pendulum swings both ways. I think it's true. And I don't want to impugn everyone who still has a job in cable news as being a sellout.
Right.
I will say that people that work in corporate media, especially cable news, but across the board of corporate media, it's an environment that really rewards operators. I mean, I'm sure you and I know a lot of the same people who kept cushy jobs in development departments at big, sort of networks, and they never really did anything other than sort of sidle up and take credit for things that other people did, and then distance themselves from bad decision or risk making. So really, it's people that just want to play it safe and be like, that literally are the sidekicks. Like, yeah, good one. I like that one. That idea. Yeah,
you're so right. You're so right. I was just telling my dad about this in corporate media. My dad's almost 80, and I was like, this is how it is, Dad, today. I don't know how it was in your day. But yeah, the guys who keep their jobs for 20, 30 years at a corporate media, what's this company, they have no ego issues. They just go along to get along, do whatever they're told. It doesn't matter who wins, who loses, as long as they just, they're just taking orders kind of thing, regardless of the outcomes. That's kind of my cynical feeling. But
I think that's right. And I will say, from cable news talent point of view, the other way they sort of keep it going is to go conservative. But look at Megyn Kelly. When she was kind of at her peak, when she was litigating against Trump, and she's got a bright legal mind. I mean, she's bold. And then she tried to do like dayside hosting with Today's Show. Huge failure. That's not her vibe. And then so she left, got a huge package.
Yeah.
And now she's become flat out conspiracy theorist. And she puts out all this crazy, like really transphobic, awful stuff because she needs an audience and she knows the conservatives will come to her. Now, is she as influential as she was? No, because she's purely preaching to the choir. She's got an audience. She's doing very well, but she's doing very well in her own little sort of balkanized little area. So, you can always go conservative, I guess. Doesn't quite work as well on the progressive side because I think most mainstream media probably already covers that pretty well.
I have so much more to talk just in general media and getting your thoughts on. I am so glad to finally be talking to you, really enjoying your thoughts on things. Let me just quickly, I got to ask you about the debates and give us a bit of a preview. I'm going to be hosting a Zoom. You want to pop in for 2 minutes? We'd love to hear your take on it. But Colby, what are we expecting on Fox News? Now I'm forgetting where the debate is. Is it in Iowa?
In Milwaukee, the Pfizer
in Wisconsin,
Forum
right?
In Milwaukee, yeah.
And so, give us a preview? Most people know the names. If they don't, you'll about to know. But Colby, what do we expect from this? Brett Baer, Martha McCallum moderating?
They're moderating, and there's 8 candidates from top to bottom. I think the dynamics to keep a closest eye on will be Ron DeSantis, I think, really wants to sort of secure his place back as the number 2 behind Trump. And he's dealing with an aggressive sort of rocket shot, Vivek Ramaswamy, who's starting to get some negative attention because he said some bonkers shit recently. I think that's the one dynamic. I think the big dynamic will be also Chris Christie, not just going after Trump really, really hard, but also taking down every other candidate that's on the stage for being so feckless and soft and just basically say, these candidates have been, they're so afraid of the Trump base that they are putting their own sort of political aspirations ahead of what one would arguably say is like sort of patriotic duty or reason. So Chris Christie is really good. He's a New Jersey guy who is just a great litigator, great prosecutor. Yep. He'll be the fireworks guy. He could blow himself up if he's not a little restrained. So that's what I expect to see. It would be, I think there's a slight chance Trump still shows up in the sort of like pro wrestling surprise move, but probably not.
Because his lawyers have told him probably not, that it would be a bad thing. I've heard.
I think so, but I do think that sort of everything that Trump does is through that kayfabe kind of pro wrestling ethos, because it's just like, even during the first 2016 RNC, he showed up. Cruz was taking a speech and taking him down, and he showed up in the back wings and just to watch, and it was straight out of WWE.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, you just leaving the door open that he might arrive is I don't want to describe the emotion.
It would be the most Trump thing ever. I don't really expect it, but part of me is kind of like hoping that happens.
But Fox News executive producers, along with Martha McCallum and Bret Baier, are talking about, just in case, what are we going to do? And that's crazy. But let me just ask you about...
Let's get some smoke machines. Just in case he shows up.
Cue the Trump appearance package.
Right.
It's got to be, they got a Trump appearance package. I mean, legally, I guess... He can. He's invited. Is there a podium? He brings his own podium. It's got the presidential seal.
They play that Alan Parsons Project theme song from introducing the Chicago Bulls. Ladies and gentlemen,
yes.
It would be epic, and it would be. I mean, it would blow up the internet, and then he would probably say shit that would, he'd have to be let out in cuffs afterwards because he doesn't have much restraint. I'm starting to think.
Vivek Ramaswamy, you've got a couple posts at Mediaite about him. There's always kind of your thoughts and analysis, but you're often analyzing through the thoughts and analysis of, say, Fox and Friends. Headline: Fox and Friends hammers DeSantis debate prep leak. Praises Vivek Ramaswamy's campaign catching lightning in a bottle is the quote. How is the right-wing media interpreting this guy? Tell me anything you want about this. I don't know. Wonder kind.
Well, he's an interesting cat. I mean, he's a very successful business hedge fund guy from Ohio. He's really talented public speaker in that he says a lot of things that sound smart, but really don't hold up any scrutiny. And I think Fox News is over Trump. They can't admit that because so many of their viewers are Trump fans. They really thought DeSantis would be the kinder, gentler, or, sort of more palatable Trump. DeSantis doesn't have a good personality, which, by the way, I'd heard from Republican insiders for 2 years ago, watch how he is with people. He's not good with people. And it's true. He's not good with people. And so if DeSantis' campaign is dead on arrival, here comes this upstart who's, a perfect Fox News figure. Again, he's like poor Steve Hilton, who hosts a weekend show for Fox News until he got pulled off. He got canceled. Vivek's like a better, more telegenic, quicker version of that. So I think, but now that Vivek is kind of under the spotlight, I suspect a lot of stuff is going to come out against him of being kind of flaky and conspiratorial. And already we're seeing negative stories come out of that. But
when you say
it's trying to play with that.
But it's tricky because you're talking to me and you're saying negative story. Is it a negative? Is it a negative for Vivek Ramaswamy to question the official account of 9/11 to Republican primary voters who believe, many of them, that Trump is still president, that the moon is made of cheese, that you can mine a child's blood when they're in an excited state to live forever? It doesn't seem like it's that hard.
Well, that's a much deeper conversation about the sort of deterioration of facts and accepted truisms and truth across them. I mean, everything is a Rorschach test now, for better, but mostly worse. And, I have a friend that writes me, hated my headline about this Joe Biden sleeping story, where I said, it's the latest Rorschach political test. He clearly wasn't asleep, but it didn't keep, sort of conservative influencers like, aha, now Biden's old. And I think it's a fair conversation to talk about if he's way too old, but you can do it without being ageist. But this was he nodded his head for 20 seconds. That doesn't mean he was falling asleep, at least this time. He's done it before. But I think everything's in this window of old man's going to act old. So we see it that way. And so if we can't agree on basic facts, 9/11 was not an inside job and the moon's not made of cheese, we're kind of lost, I think, with political work.
I use the terminology within my show here of Earth 1 and Earth 2. Climate change is real, vaccines work, and
science and data actually make sense.
The president,
right? There's no great conspiracy.
Right, there's no great conspiracy around the election. Hawaii wasn't set fire by Bill Gates. Those, kind of beliefs are unfortunately the litmus test. I got to say this about you. I hate to say it. It's very flattering about you, but I didn't want to read this piece, your most recent one, Todd. Did Joe Biden fall asleep during Maui wildfire memorial service? Take the latest political Rorschach test. I was like, do I need to read this? But the thing is, I've said that about some of your pieces, 1 out of 10, maybe 2 out of 10. Do I want to read Colby's thing? the truth is, whenever I'm done reading, I'm like, I'm glad I read that, because headlines are sometimes deceiving, and you make a lot of really good points, and you've now trademarked this, political Rorschach test era. I think it's a really important thing for folks like us to continue to apply, because when you see a thing happen, you've decided the outcome, the conclusion, before you've read past the headline. I think that's really important to have that nuance, which is what I like about your work, but it's in general, that conversation, right? Like this Rorschach test, it's not science, but it kind of feels like it should be at this point, social science.
Well, I mean, there's another issue thank you for saying that. I really appreciate that, and it means a lot to me. There was another issue that came up in the last few years, this idea that Democrats were for infanticide, that they wanted to kill babies. And it was pegged on this Governor Northam, Virginia radio interview where they talked about the really tragic process of dealing with a non-viable fetus. And it was misconstrued as saying this is how they kill babies after they're born. And it became so repeated by elected officials. And every time I heard it, I was like, I can't let that stand, because that's not abortion, that's murder, and that's not what's happening there. And yes, there's a debate about late-term abortion, which is an awful tragedy, and that's a fair thing to have. You can't lie. So every time that came up, I was like, do I have to write this story again? And I kind of felt like I have to, not because I'm a big hero or anything, but it just drove me nuts to let these guys, get away with that. And, am I harsher on the right than I am on the left with that sort of stuff? Probably, but I think the right plays a little bit looser and faster with the facts. At that level of sort of black and white, there's plenty of room to criticize the left for playing in shades of gray, but, nuance is a smart technique, I guess. But yeah, you got to, I mean, if you give up, if you don't apply yourself, you're going to let those guys win, and you can't let that happen.
Well, you're not doing that. And I like when if you're beating one drum for a long time. I'm all for that, because it shows me your editorial preference. Like, I have to stay on this. We have to make sure that this lie doesn't catch fire, because we have seen what happens when we see the result. I mean, like this terrible shooting out in California, the poor woman, the rainbow flag, like it's hard not to think that that's as a result of the rhetoric and policy, by the way, that they've passed, like get the flag removed from schools and stuff, and connecting homosexuality with pedophilia, with sexual abuse. It's really dangerous and scary. So we've got to do everything we can to speak out, to show that nuance, to make sure people don't get misled so easily. I feel like you have a lot of compassion for people being misled.
Well, I mean, if you're a media watchdog, you got a really clear job, and that is to sort of like try to call out. And I think what kind of works well for Mediaite is that we decided from the very get we weren't going to speak to one choir. Like, there's a lot of absurdities and crazy rhetoric that comes out on the left. I mean, we focus a lot on Fox News because they're dominant and they drive there's all this talk about mainstream media being left biased. The most consumed media right now in this landscape is conservative media. If you add up Fox News ratings with Daily Wire and Breitbart and that whole scene, they're winning that debate. So yeah, I think you kind of have to call them out and try to call balls and strikes. That's why conservatives kind of like Mediaite, because we will occasionally call out some crazy on the left as well. Yeah,
well, next time we talk, maybe we could just exclusively do stuff about the left, and then I'll probably painfully try to defend everything.
Sounds good.
No matter what. Colby, you got to understand. We take it in full context and whatever it is. We can also
because you're a media elitist. That's it, right?
Yes, media elitist in a shed.
There you go.
Thank you so much for talking to me. This was awesome, even better than I thought it would go, and I hope that you'll come back. I know everybody's going to love it.
Yeah, I'd love to, honestly. Let's do this more often.
Well, there you go. What'd you think of Colby Hall of Mediaite? I hope you liked him. I hope you liked his demeanor, his analysis, his kind of moral clarity, in my opinion. I really enjoyed that conversation, and it'll be great if he comes back, because he's got a big following, and maybe at some point, we'll start doing something more together, which would be awesome, because he's a big deal and a good guy, and very nice of him to join me, and I take him at his word. Hopefully he'll join me again. But check out his stuff and let him know that you heard him here on the show. Reach out to him on Twitter or whatever you call it, or anywhere else that he is on. All of his stuff is in the show notes for today's show. Always find out more about the guests wherever you're listening. Hopefully you're listening as a Patreon subscriber. Patreon? I don't know how it's pronounced. Don't care. Don't love them. But it is the service I use. So go over to patreon.com/PeteDominic and spend the $5 a month to get access to our community, which I hope to see you tonight at the GOP debates. I'll open the Zoom at about 8:30, and then we will hang out and watch from 9 to 11 together and laugh and make fun of and support each other when we want to cry. That's tonight at 8:30, and tomorrow night, of course, at 8 p.m. East. I'll host the regular hangout. Hope to see you there. That's it. That's all. Zip it up and zip it out. Look for my conversation with Decoding Fox News' Juliet Jeske. I think I'll drop that later this afternoon unless something comes up, but that's the plan, and Jon Carroll is going to sing us out. That's the remainder of the plan.
Stand our ground, and then stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up, they had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We got to let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right, we got to speak up, we got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well, and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up, stand up. Oh, got to stand